Onion Cycles podcast is about thought provoking, emotion evoking, action driven, step by step guidance to explore the unique, glorious, and wonderful ocean of your being. Because healing is a multi layered process of getting to know oneself. Become the self empowered empiric researcher by discovering the unique layers of your existence. With your host, Nadine Alma, welcome to the Holistic Healing Hub. Welcome to the Onion Cycles podcast. Hello, my beloved, wonderful onions. Welcome back to another episode. Welcome to this sacred space of healing. I hope you're all doing all right. I hope whatever challenge crosses your path, you master it with grace and with the right mindset towards it. I hope you have the strength to do it that way. And wherever you are in your life right now and whatever you do, thank you for making time to dedicate some of your energy to your own healing journey. I myself am beyond happy to be back and very grateful to be back in this second week of our month dedicated to the art of love. It was a quite interesting first week of our journey, and I have uploaded the blog post corresponding with the last episode so that you can have an insight in what this last week has been offering me in the form of learning lessons and in the form of our communal exercise of asking ourselves, what would a person who loves themselves do in specific situations? Today's episode, The Art of Love Part 2, we are going to dive into the theory of love as expressed by Erich Fromm's essay, The Art of Loving. I will link the access to his essay down below, and I highly recommend you, like we said in our first episode, to stay curious and do your own research and dive straight into, not just for your own sake, but also for the sake of Erich Fromm's overall message, because quite frankly, it is very complex and it is a in-depth view on the theory of love, so we will not cover everything that he proposes and every theorem he sets up in this episode. However, I will try to comprise the information as much as possible. There are certain things I will dive deeper as those have resonated more with what I want to bring forth into this podcast episode. And as always, be sure to check out my website www.wonderfinder.org, where you will find the available free of charge worksheet that accompanies this episode, where you find exercises and also the notes of what we have discussed today. With all of that said, let's dive straight in. I'm very excited. Story 10, Episode 10, The Art of Love, Part 2, The Theory of Love. As we have discovered in the last episode, what Erich Fromm proposes is that love actually is not something we just fall in or fall out of, but it is something that we can view from the lens of an art form. That meaning that we look at the theory, the practice, and that we are dedicated to it with our actions and our overall self-empiric study, so to speak, we discovered that the deepest need is to overcome separateness. We strive for one-ment. We come originally from the mother. We are at one-ment with mother, with nature, with all, with source, with God, with the universe, whatever label or name you want to attach to it. But we come from something that symbolizes the one-ment, the wholeness of us. And we come from that, and now we are in this human body experiencing separateness. So all we do is ask the question, how can we transcend our own individual life and find at one-ment again? How can we achieve union? What Erich Fromm proposes are 4 different ways of doing that. So the first way is contained within the layers of an orgiastic, orgasmic, transcending sort of spasmodic experience, meaning that we are seeking out states where we can comprise that one-ment through an action, be it in the form of group rituals like early indigenous people did, like come together as a tribe and dance and become ecstatic, meaning we transcend the state of being here in this physical reality that we experience, or orgasmic through sexual experiences. There are obviously a multitude of different layers to that. But if you want to dive into all of the intense and very detailed explanations of him, please be sure to check out the original essay. However, he says that through an orgasmic experience, we also come to the state of at one-ment, of union. And lastly, through drugs and alcohol and everything that enables us to achieve a transcending state of mind, of being, with something that we can take in. All of these are one way of achieving union again, and all of them are spasmodic. They are intense, they are transitory, meaning they encompass both body and mind while doing them, and also they are periodical, meaning that they have to be rinsed and repeat to have the effect. So if you have, for example, an a night out and you are intoxicated, the day after, most of the time you don't feel that good. So you rinse and repeat it the next weekend or the next day or the next night to get that same feeling again. So you seek a state of transcendence from this world, or you seek something outside of yourself to attain union again. That's the first one, which I find pretty interesting because that's exactly what I experienced in my own life from the age of basically 19 to the age of 27 when I came clean. And I still to this day am enslaved in a way to finding the balance between the addiction and the actual social part, because for such a long time in my life it was an addiction and it had nothing to do with something that a person who loves themselves would do. That brings me to the second way of how we try to gain union again and find a or overcome separateness, and that is conformity. So he proposes that in early humanity that was rather small. So conformity was basically through the bloodline or through shared soil in a tribe or something like that. And then through the development, through the settlements that expanded and the enlargement of everything, that led to citizenships and being proud of your country, to organized religion, which is a very big part in all of it. And that sort of led to the disappearance of individualism. So, for the sake of fitting in, for the sake of belonging to something, we sort of severed ties with our uniqueness because we thought we had to. In order to not be rejected, we needed to conform to the majority, to what is said to be right. I am saved from loneliness if I am no different to anyone else, because then I belong. So, what he's saying is that this sort of induced conformity comes from either a dictatorial or democratic system. The dictatorial system, we all know, comprises threats and terror, and the democratic system, is what he says, is a suggestion and a propaganda on a very subtle level. Individualism is still needed, but it's left to minor things. Like, for example, what shoes you wear, what label your purse is, what religion you belong to, what political views you have. That is the individualism that is still necessary, and that is the individualism that has been minimalized from the original individualism that would be suggesting that we all are unique and beautiful the way we are. We all know that there has been some sort of awakening. A huge part, in my opinion, has got to do with the internet and the access of different views and different ways of leading a life, of viewing life, which, as with everything in life, can be both viewed and expressed positively and negatively. I don't really have an opinion on that because I believe we need both. We are in the world of duality and polarity. So the bottom line is that through the internet, we are able to access different perceptions and different lines of thinking. And I believe that led to the realization that there is actually more uniqueness and more individualism in the world than we actually knew before the rise of the internet, when when we were very much contained in our immediate surroundings. Through conformity, equality has been reframed. Equality originally meant that we are all one, meaning we are a divine substance. We are all made of the same atoms. We all are stardust, if you want. And the differences of all of us must be respected, meaning that the whole is always bigger than the sum of its parts, meaning also that we are all one, yet each one is a unique entity, a cosmos by itself. I'm giving a disclaimer here if you haven't listened to the episode called Sonder. This is a concept that we discuss in that very episode, where each and every one that we meet and that we encounter and that we never will encounter has the same epic and huge life story and life perception and ups and downs that we experience. So he says exactly that. And he also says that no being must be the needs of the ends of another being. When in contemporary capitalistic societies reformed this equality and made it into sameness, which I believe is the root of all disagreement and of all counter arguments when it comes to equality. Equality doesn't mean sameness. It means the respect from one being to the other, that even if you don't have the same worldview, you are still in your essence divine. Yet our capitalistic society, reformed equality to sameness. Union by conformity is counter to unity by diversity. It is also insufficient to pacify the anxiety of separateness. And that is shown quite severely in the symptoms of herd conformity, which are drug addictions, alcoholism, compulsive sexualism, pornography, sexualization, mental illnesses, and suicides. The only thing that conformity provides for the herd more continuously than in the first example of the orgasmic, or transcending type of finding union again, is that it is not spasmodic but permanent, meaning from the age of 3 or 4 years old we are introduced to the herd, and from then on we will never be released from the herd, right up to our funeral, which is also a social event. So we have this system that keeps us from realizing that we're actually more than the system. This also plays into the very well known concept of routines, meaning that we are forged into a work routine and a fun routine, and those routines come over and over again. We are basically never left alone from the herd, from the system, never left to decide for our own who we are, what we want to be, who we want to be, and how we want to lead our lives. And work as it is now, for the majority of people, ceases to be something that is of value to them. It is just an act to gain money to survive, which is a whole different subject. And like I said, check out this essay. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me. So, we had point one, the orgasmic, and transcending trial to get back to union. We had conformity to come back to unity. And now we have the third one, which is creative activity. Be it the artist or the artisan, be it the farmer who grows stuff or the painter who paints stuff. This sort of search for union comes from the point of view that the creator gains oneness with the object of his creation. So the object of his creation represents the outside world, the world outside of himself. And what he's doing now in creating it is becoming one again with the outside world. I personally can absolutely subscribe to that feeling. How he's describing it is mind-blowing, because I've never understood why I loved creating stuff so much, why I loved being productive so much. I thought it only came from the conditioning of self-worth equals productivity, or productivity equals self-worth. But it is something innately within us that we want to create. We are all creators, and in a way we're all creatives, but we are drained of that life force flowing through us by a system that doesn't provide the free time to actually access this free flow, because we're constantly bombarded with things we have to do in order to have bare necessities to survive. We're also bombarded with things we have to do in order to be accepted, things we have to do in order to impress, things we have to do, things we have to do, things we have to do. It's a never-ending cycle. So it drains us of the life force energy that then actually gives us access to our innate creativity. He says the only thing that is very important to understand about the creative activity is that it only counts if you yourself plan it, produce it, and you then see the results. So that's why I brought in the factory belt worker, because in that example, there is no union possible because the worker itself ceases to be himself. He's basically just a tool, and he just works towards the progress of capitalism. It doesn't go into union, it goes back into conformity. Both the first one I experienced, the second one I experienced because I always thought I never fit in. What am I doing wrong? Why am I not fitting in? And I tried very hard for the majority of my life to let go of all the things I thought were wrong with me. And all the things that I thought were wrong with me, I'm actually doing now, and I'm so much happier and so much more fulfilled and so much more able to reflect on how to invest my energy, in what I want to invest my energy, and what I want to become, and what I want to be in the present moment. So I can absolutely subscribe to both 1 and 2. I also can subscribe to 3, as I told you, the process of creation, the process of finding my own creativity, which started very recently, but was always there underneath the surface. I can absolutely subscribe to that too. So the fourth thing that he says is, the first one is transitory, the second one is pseudo, and the third one is not interpersonal, because what we are creating is the outside world, but it not necessarily has something to do with other people, right? So the unity from the first 3 points is only a partial answer to the problem of existence. So there's a fourth one, and he calls it the interpersonal union, meaning the fusion with another person being the answer, which is love. So at the fundamental core, and that force that keeps humanity together, is love. The fusion with another person, therefore, is interpersonal union. But, and here it gets very interesting and even deeper, this essay goes into such depth of explaining all the ambiguity that comes from that statement. Because fusion is not to be understood as a symbiotic union. Fusion is to be understood as the mature form of love, and the symbiotic union is to be understood as the immature love. He wants to make a point and really emphasizes the point that the symbiotic union, in essence, is unhealthy and immature. Whereas the fusion, the mature kind of love, that, for example, comes from a mother, because a mother nurtures the baby and the baby is totally dependent on her. But the experience of having it, being dependent on it and nurturing it and giving it care and love, enhances the experience of the mother. Therefore, we have to become one, yet remain two, because there is still the element of individuality, even if the baby yet has no idea that it is separate from mother. With that in mind, the example he gives for a symbiotic union, an immature love, would be the passive or active versions of that, meaning the passive one, submission, as we could see in a masochistic relationship, and the active version of it being a state of domination, a sadistic way of life. The reason I'm saying that is because he describes masochistic as basically having no need to participate actively in the question of existence, making no decisions, and only existing to the point of what the other, the all, the God, the idol, gives you existence for. And then we have basically the sadist, who commands, exploits, hurts, and humiliates. So we have in those two examples fusion without integrity. And he describes fusion with integrity, like I said, two becoming one, but still remaining two, because the integrity and individuality isn't lost, as what interpersonal union and the core of love should look like. So, love unites and overcomes separateness while retaining the integrity. Love is an activity, it's a standing in and not a falling for. Love is an activity, is not to be understood as basically something to do. It is not, as we so often have seen it in our society, that an activity is something very active. An activity is also if you are in deep contemplation, at peace with yourself and the world, in looking out onto the ocean and just being merry and thinking about things. That is also an activity. So what he means with activity is that it is not a passive effect. So love, he then goes on to explain, from that point of view, from the interpersonal union, from the fusion with another person while remaining the own integrity, love is primarily giving and not receiving. But he underlines and emphasizes again that there are a multitude of complexities that go along with that statement. For example, he says that the refusal to give, if you don't get anything back, is comparable to a market worth and capitalism. There's also the viewing of giving as a virtue, meaning that you fall into the trap of sacrifice. So it's better to suffer than to experience joy. What he means with giving is the highest expression of potency. He says, my strength, my wealth, and my power that fill me with joy is the art of giving, because in the act of giving lies the expression of aliveness. The person who gives is rich because once the minimal necessities are met, and that in parentheses depends on character and actual possessions, you are able to not give materially, you give life. You give life force. You give that which is alive within you. You give knowledge. You give humor. You give wisdom. You give support. You give understanding. You give compassion. So the moment you give enhances the others with a sense of aliveness. So you're bringing something to life within the other person. In that transaction, if you want to call it, something is born in the act of giving. Love is a power to produce love. That is what he means with giving. So if you feel joy and enrichment and aliveness when you are with someone, it doesn't matter how you would label the relationship, there is love being born there and multiplied and expanded, because love isn't parted, love only expands. So the ability to love as an act of giving is a faith in your own human power. It is knowing who you are. It is knowing what your light is. It is knowing and appreciating your uniqueness and making it a present, a gift to the world. My beloved souls out there, my beautiful fellow onions, this is the essence of what I want to conclude this podcast today, is giving. He also goes into other factors that comprise how love can look like, or what love needs to bring to the surface to actually be labeled love, like care and concern, the active concern of the growth of what we love, the responsibility not as duty or something imposed upon us from the outside, but something that is a responds to the need of another. He talks about respect, and he talks about how knowledge plays into that. But to me, having those three main factors of how we try so hard every single day to get back to a sense of at-one-ment, of wholeness, of union, the most important one for me was to see that this is a universal thing. It's not just a you thing, it's not just a me thing, it comprises the whole of our society. And I believe knowledge like this should be spread and should be in the news daily. Knowledge like this is what enables us to grow as people, because we can understand ourselves so much better. And that is why this essay had to be made into different parts of this podcast, because the essence of healing is knowing oneself. And by knowing oneself better, we judge less and we love more. And all of this plays together in a beautiful fusion, as Erich Fromm would call it, of pieces that bring us back to wholeness and to oneness. We are all unique. We are all one, yet each one is a unique entity, a cosmos by itself. And we should only really focus on getting to know ourselves, our triggers, our highs, our lows, why they are there, why we react, why we feel, why we think the way we think, feel, and act. And these four main principles of how we try to get back to one-ment actually help us understand ourselves so much better, and also know in what areas of our life which of them comes to play, why we do the things we do, why we think the things we think, why we feel the things we feel. I loved sharing this knowledge with all of you beautiful, wonderful souls out there. I sincerely hope that the time you invested in listening to this was beneficial to you and raises some very interesting conversations with your loved ones and with yourself even. I hope the worksheet is of service to you and assists you in this following week of contemplation of what we talked about. And please don't forget the ongoing exercise of essential self-care. By whenever called to do this, whenever it resonates with you, whenever you feel like guidance is called for, what would a person who loves themselves do? I see you. I understand you. I open my heart wide to all of you out there and send you all the love and the light I have in my being. I'm honored you shared this life force, this time with me. I love you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful week, my beloved fellow onions.